Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Life Podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Surface, and I'm looking across at a man currently engineering his own super-powered breakfast cereal for high performers called Feedbackios. That's right, friends, the former Navy SEAL, Garrett Unkelbach, a man who knows that feedback is the breakfast of champions.
That's exactly right. I
What would you
learned.
pour on a bowl of Feedbackios, though, G?
What would I pour in a bowl? I would take some leadership milk and
Ooh,
with or some personal growth and development milk,
I have so many
which
questions
is
about where you get
that
leadership
that
milk.
that's you taking, like, I'm going to take the feedback, or you know what? It's positive attitude milk. That's what it is.
Ooh,
I'm
there
gonna
it
I'm
is.
gonna take this feedback and have the right attitude about it, and then but in this context, it's not the perfect analogy because cereal is great by itself. um
Well, there you go.
I would eat cereal by itself. You don't want to just eat feedback by itself. You want to eat feedback with the right attitude so that you can ingest it properly and get the most out of it, instead of just be sad and feel sorry for yourself when people tell you things that you don't like to hear.
Yeah, well, thank you for taking my comical intro and turning it into a real life analogy for all of us to learn. And, hint, I wrote that intro specifically for what we're talking about today, because today is the growth super hack. And we don't believe in super hacks. So the name of super hack is kind of a misnomer because I think super hack carries with it the thought process of shortcuts. And if you know, the test is always what, G? What's the test always?
Faithfulness.
Faithfulness, which means that you don't take the shortcuts. It means you keep going, being faithful with what's in your hand, and you trust God to bring about his purposes in your life, which means you just keep going the course. So here's the thing. If you're listening to the Impossible Life podcast, you know that we're growth minded. We very much are about getting all of it, which means that you fulfilled 100% of who God made you to be and his plans in the earth, which is a lofty
If you're
aim.
listening to this podcast, it's not because you want 75% of your life. You want 100%. You
You
want
want it
God
all.
to give. You want everything that God has for you. I don't want more than what God has for me, but I know what God has for me is exactly what I should want. I don't want, then that's the posture of my heart, saying, like, I know that you've created me for good work. You've created me for the things that you have for me, and that's what I want. And I don't want anything else besides that, because that would be wrong. And to want anything less than that is also wrong.
Yeah. And God made you to grow. I mean, it's just as simple as that. He made you to grow. Sanctification is a process. The whole of our life points to process. So you're always going to be in process. So we want to help everybody out there that's in process, which is all of us, know some of the obstacles you're going to face. And hopefully you can start recognizing those obstacles when they present themselves, because these are things that people sail back past all the time. So assuming you want to grow, which we're assuming you do, here's the question for you. What do you think the growth process looks like? Because here's what we love, man. We all love a montage where we just keep winning and we overcome all the challenges, takes 30 to 45 seconds, and we feel great while we do it. And also we look cool. Oh, what's that? Something went wrong? Man, my biceps were bulging. My hair was perfect. I had a little bit of misplaced dirt on my face and some sweat, but man, I overcame it and looked amazing. And we love this like beautiful looking picture of growth where it's just straight line up the hill. What actually growth looks like is
Everybody
you just
loves the Rocky montage.
that, of course they do. Well, and what it actually looks like is seeing all your preferences and selfishness exposed. It really hurts. Like growth is, man, you think you're doing well, and then you get kneecapped by something you never saw coming that literally drops you to your knees. And when you get that, you have a choice. You can either deny what the feedback was and your selfishness. You can disagree with it. You can refuse to believe it's true, or as your dad said, you can assess whether the shoe fits. And if the shoe fits, wear it. Right?
The
Like you
the,
have
uh,
to.
the Rocky montage skips, like, straight from all of the hard work to, like, I see the results of my hard work.
Right.
That's the shortest
Yes.
of the montage, because the reality is, like, this is like you go do the hardest workout you've ever done, and then you go home and look in the mirror and you look exactly the same.
That's exactly right.
And you do
Yeah.
this over and over and over again. And it's like, man, all this stuff, all this growth that I'm experiencing is really just pain. I'm not really seeing the results yet. And that's
Yeah.
what you have to have the right attitude about that feedback that says, okay, I know I just probably need more of this. I need to respond appropriately to it, and I'll grow from it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the physical example that we can all see. The ones that hurt, I think, even worse are you start doing all this personal development work on yourself. You really decide to change your life. And then people are like, yeah, but dude, we've known you for the past 10 years and you've been kind of a doofus. So they just treat you like a doofus. You're like, no, I've changed. Okay. Well, the feedback is telling you that they don't see it yet. And that's
Yeah,
hard. That
physic
hurts.
physical is slow, right? You don't like you work out for 30 days and you'll see like minor changes. And also physical is the fastest of all the areas in your
Yes.
life to
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. My wife said something once when I was doing my Project 40, and she said it'll take 4 weeks for you to notice. It'll take 8 weeks for other people to notice. And I just thought that was such a brilliant thing that she said. And I've always stuck to it anytime I've really started getting into it because I found it to be true. And even then, they're not going to notice that much. And if that's what you need, well, then you might want to reassess your motivation. But anyways, so the prerequisite for this and something just to take on board is because really this is how to deal with feedback and how to identify it, because oftentimes feedback doesn't come in the form of like, well, Garrett, I'd like to sit down and talk about your performance today. Like we all get that at work. You don't get that in life. Life's feedback comes in many forms, and we're going to dive into some scriptures. We're going to look at 3 types of people and the way that they respond to feedback, and we're going to also give you some examples of it so you can identify it in your own life and how to deal with it. But here's what you should know: your identity is very closely tied to how you deal with feedback. If your identity is based on your own performance, on needing to be accepted from other people and have them approve of you, or for what you possess, you're going to have feedback be very crushing for you. If it's hard for someone to look at you and tell you something negative, and look, it's always, no one wants to be told, hey, you're failing in this area. Like I don't want to give this a shine that's not actually accurate. But if it's to the point that you dread it, and I've been there, man, when you're asking when somebody's like, hey, so and they get ready to say something to you about an area you were performing, whether it's your work or whatever, where you were trying to achieve something, and the feedback's coming and you're dreading it because you can't stand the thought of anything positive. This is a highlight to you that you probably have some identity work to do, because it's always hard, but there's a different attitude you take to feedback when you really want to grow. Like when you're not worried about what it says about you, aka you don't need it to have a strong identity. You want to hear where you're missing it because you want to get better. It's almost disappointing if someone's like, you did everything right, because you're like, well, then that means that I can't get any better from what you're saying. And that's disappointing. You want to hear people say, here's where you can grow. Here's where you can improve. I'll give you credit to Garrett. Very early on when we started this podcast, and we would do our we have a lot of preparation that goes into these things. We have at this point a very proven process of how we build our story arcs, assimilate information, organize it, and then deliver it. So what Garrett did was he called me one day out of the blue before Mighty Man. He was like, "Hey, I want you to start giving me feedback on what you think of my preaching every Saturday." I was kind of surprised. I felt honored that you'd ask me, and I was like, "Okay." Now this was years ago, and we still, as of here we are in August of 2025, I'll still shoot you a message most Saturdays and be like, thought this was great. This went a little bit long. I think you overstacked here. Actually, you were great. Other days I'll just be like, bro, you were like level 10. But I just think that's a very humble thing, because you could sit there and be like, well, what's Nick know? You know what I mean? Like he's not some great speaker. I don't need to hear from him. But you saw that we had a process that worked here, and you said, hey, I want you to tell me where I need to get better. And that always stuck out to me, because you could easily just be like, well, I don't need to hear
Tiger
from you.
Tiger Woods had a coach when for over a decade he was the best golfer in the world. Had a coach the whole time. Right. So everybody needs to hear feedback. There has to be a separation as well between this is the identity portion, between how you feel about yourself and what people tell you. Okay. So if I get upset when other people like this is an exaggeration, but if someone's like, hey, I think you could have done this better, whether it's about speaking or your work or whatever else, someone says, hey, I think you could have done this better. Your response is, I thought you liked me.
Right.
That's you
Yeah.
saying like, I want you, I want you to feel good about me because that makes me feel good about me. And if that's what your desire is to feel good about yourself, you're done growing. I appreciate when Nick tells me when I do well. I always prepare. So I know I'm not going to just be terrible, but I'm looking for ways that I can be better in the future. And so I appreciate when he tells me I do well, and I take that as feedback. If he doesn't give me any corrective feedback, I just internally say, okay, what did I do in my preparation here that I can use as growth information? Or when he tells me, hey, I didn't think this part was great, I may have thought that what I did was good, but if he tells me it's not, okay, I'm gonna hear him. I'm gonna look at that a different way. And so whenever you receive feedback, you've got to have this understanding of like, even if Nick's like, man, you weren't very good at all. That doesn't mean that I can't believe that I'm gonna be a great speaker, but I also need to be humble enough to hear, right? What I see for myself, who I believe I'm capable of being, may be different than my current results right now. And it's the same as like a fat dude knowing that he's an athlete. What current circumstances, you are obese. Now, who you are, you can be an athlete as a person. Maybe you're an athlete before. Maybe you just see that potential within yourself. Current circumstances, you're dramatically overweight, and so there's you have to be the one that receives the tension between those things of where I am and where I want to be. And we've talked about this before. This isn't an identity episode, but part of identity, it's vision, values, and beliefs. Right? It's that the vision piece of like, this is who I see for myself to be. Right? And so where there's tension is between the feedback they give you. And if you'll hear feedback in the right attitude, you're helping tell me how to get to where I want to be.
Yeah. And there's three types of people when it comes to feedback. Like if you read through Proverbs, which we hope you do, because we've been on the Proverbs a day train for a long time in life, where basically today, as we record this, it's the 6th. So guess what proverb we read? Proverbs 6. There's 31 proverbs, and there's never more than 31 days. So it's a beautiful symmetry that works perfectly. And this is to grow in wisdom. But as you read through Proverbs, there's three types of people. There's the simpleton, the fool, and then the wise and prudent person. And by and large, the biggest differentiation between those people is how they observe and deal with feedback. It really is that simple. And I don't want to, as you read through, I would challenge you, look for when it says the simple or the simpleton or the fool or the wise or the prudent, and look how they react and by and large what it's talking about. I'll give you a few scriptures here. So the simpleton, Proverbs 22:3, the prudent see danger and take refuge. Okay, great. But the simple keep going and pay the penalty. What does that say? They didn't even see it. They just kind of walked right into it. Their head down, completely unaware and oblivious. Proverbs 7:7, and I have seen among the simple, I have perceived among the youths, a young man lacking sense. What is the simpleton? This is a person that has no awareness, that completely ignores the feedback that's coming their way because they didn't even see it. They're not recognizing patterns, because in Proverbs 7:7, he's talking about a simpleton who's going near the door of the house of the prostitute, of the wayward woman, and is completely unaware, goes there at night like, oh, wow, I didn't expect to see you here. Really? Well, it's nighttime. She's here every single weekend just eating men alive, and you just completely didn't ignore it. Okay, that's, you keep going and you're going to pay the penalty. Well, what's the penalty here? Man, it's going to absolutely destroy your life. This could be in your health. This could be in your marriage. This could be in your business. This is in every place. You're just walking along hoping it works out. No idea, not seeing the patterns in your life, not aware of what's causing success or failure, not having any feedback that you've either requested or seen. And then, hey, we'll just see what happens to you. Well, you're going to get blindsided and clobbered. And when you do, I hope that you have some people there to help you pick you up. It's hard.
We're going to talk about a couple different of the types of people. And with the simpleton, I see this. The simpleton is also couple ways to say that would be ignorant or unaware. Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. The prudent see danger and take refuge. They realize what was ahead of them, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. That maybe they saw something and they didn't realize it was danger. Or maybe they just don't see anything at all, and they're not paying attention. These are people who don't even have the awareness and desire for feedback. Someone might even give them feedback, and they're like, "Man, that guy was mean." Right? They don't even realize, like, the guy wasn't trying to hurt you. He was trying to help you. Right? Yeah. Or even hear and receive feedback, and they're like, "Cool, thanks, man," and just throw it right out the window because they're like, "All right, I don't know what to do with that information." Right? What is feedback? Never heard of it. And so there's a lack of awareness and an ignorance with the simpleton.
Yeah. Whereas the fool is just a full-on rebellious, like legit doesn't want to hear it. So like Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Well, here we go again. Can you just let me be? Look, I don't want to hear this. I'm fine. I'm happy. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Just keep it to yourself.
The fool has a different heart. There's either a laziness, a begrudgingness against work and what's required of them to grow and to reach their destiny, which can begin to manifest into other things, can turn into entitlement, can turn into like anger and frustration towards the external and towards other people instead of the internal. Right? The fool, he has the wrong attitude about growth. Not so much that he doesn't understand it, but either doesn't want to grow or is just opposed to people who want to help him.
Yeah, because Proverbs 12:15, The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. It's this to me is such the heart of repentance, and why it's so important that we have humility in receiving things. Because if you think you're right, why would you change? And this is so much of like, I always found it fascinating, G, that they said that John the Baptist came to prepare the way for Jesus. And you go, okay, like, what's he doing? He's coming in and telling them the Messiah is coming. Like, all this is it. No, what's he doing? He's bringing them back to repentance. It's like, are you serious? That was the prerequisite for Jesus coming to earth, was that people need to have a repentant heart? Yes. Why? Because that means that you realize your ways are wrong. Like, that's what coming to the cross is that you realize there has to be a death. Now, the good news is Jesus died on the cross in roughly 9 hours, right? And then there was a resurrection. That's a picture for us. You're not meant to spend your whole life just, in a constant drawn out death. The whole point of dying to self is that you can be resurrected to have the new life of Christ in you. And this is so much of what we miss whenever we think that we're right, or we're trying to hold on to our ways or our security or whatever it may be, is that we don't realize that we're basically foregoing the process and trying to just kind of keep a little piece of us in there, and it just doesn't work. It is a full death, and that takes humility and realizing your ways are wrong. And here we see it saying very clearly that if you're a fool, your ways are right. It says a man's way causes destruction, and his heart rages towards the Lord. That man, like, that one hits me, because I'm like, I don't sit there and go like, oh, look at all these other people. I go, man, that's me. Without Christ, that's me. I'm the guy who's like getting mad at God because things aren't going my way, and I'm the one causing my own destruction. So I mean, it's such a stark contrast.
The wise listen to advice, and so it's saying that the fools don't listen, and so there's a contrast here. This is something that I've spent a ton of time. As I grew up reading Proverbs, and this has been something that I've spent a ton of time thinking about. So does it automatically make you a fool if you don't listen to people, right? This is a challenge. Like, how do I know who I should listen to? Do I have
Yeah.
to just take anyone's advice? And so there's a couple qualifiers for that. One is, Jesus makes it really clear, who people are by their fruit. So you should listen to people who have the fruit of what you want in your life. One of the things that I had to go through was in my own journey of going into SEAL training, I had people tell me I was crazy. A lot of people tell me I was crazy, which is similar to people calling you a fool, right?
Right.
Like the path, what you're saying, you sound crazy. No one thinks that you can do what you're saying that you're going to do. And people even telling me that I can't do it. And so I had to qualify their own advice. And there was a couple things that helped me qualify that. One was I chose to be humble because I knew I didn't have it all figured out, right? And so I said, I do need to grow. I do need to learn. But I also feel like this is what I'm called to do. So you guys aren't telling me like, here's what it would take for you to do it. They're just saying you sound crazy. And so I had to, it took work for me to do, but I had to discern, where's your advice coming from? And for many people, it was either their advice was coming, they just genuinely cared about me and they were afraid for my future. And so I heard it that way and didn't hold it against them like they thought low of me. They just thought what I was trying to do was scary. Or there were people who didn't see in me what I saw in myself. Because my dad, for one, like my dad was actually concerned for my future, but my dad never doubted me, right? And so there were people that I could take, their words that gave me some security in what I was doing, and I just had to figure out whose words did I listen to and whose words did I discard. So there is a different, and really, again, what helped me with that was having a humble heart and saying, I don't know
Yeah.
everything. And I'm really confident this is where I'm supposed to do. I believe God has a plan for my life. I believe God's sending me down this road, and I'm going to go into it like 100%. But I also know that I don't know everything. I'm just going to give it all that I have. And so there were people who didn't necessarily think the way that I thought, that I didn't listen to. But there were also plenty of people who gave me feedback in the SEAL teams I've received feedback there that I had never heard anywhere before, and allowed me to grow dramatically. So it really, like, the key for the fool is humility. And the who the fool is very unhumble. I've got it all figured out. I don't want anybody's help. You guys don't know anything. You're all idiots is really the
Yeah.
fool.
That's very well said, G. And we did a great episode on mentors and advisors and teachers that you can listen to. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I'll go ahead and give myself homework like I do every single week when we do this, and put it in the show notes. So because I thought that was a really great episode. If you're looking for how to know who to listen to or what you can learn from everybody, we really broke it down in that episode. So we've alluded to the wise and prudent, and they've been mentioned in other scriptures, and you can see that it says, the wise listen to advice in Proverbs 12:15. Proverbs 10:8, the wise of heart will receive commandments, but a babbling fool will come to ruin. Proverbs 17:10, a rebuke goes deeper into a man of understanding than 100 blows into a fool. It's one of my favorite scriptures, because what that means is that if you are truly a wise and understanding, prudent person, you can just have somebody say something to you and okay, it's time to change. Whereas if you're a fool, you can just keep getting punched in the face and you're still just going to keep going. And that to me is that is what makes somebody wise. That's one of the hallmarks of wisdom, is that you are, like you said, humble, correctable, that you can receive it with a positive attitude and understand that that person's trying to help you. I think about your Navy SEAL example, and it's so valuable to hear you say that. And when you talk about the fruit that a person needs to have in their life, you were doing something that nobody in your vicinity had any knowledge or fruit. You didn't know anybody in the special forces. Like you said, the first SEAL you ever saw was your instructors. So it's like, how do you know how to weigh what's real and what's not? For most people, they're not going to have that problem. If you're like a person who wants better advice in your marriage and you're looking for what you should listen to, guess what? The people around you that have a great marriage are going to be people that you should be listening to. So hopefully you can identify that a little easier.
If I had like some Navy SEALs in my life, I would have listened to what they said. The first ones I met were my instructors. And I also knew the ones that I was meeting, my instructors, like the game had already started, and they're gonna say everything they can do to get me to quit. So I couldn't listen to them.
Right.
But I also, I ended up being that person to a lot of young tadpoles and be like, look, hey man, I'm gonna tell you exactly what you need to hear. I'll give you the feedback that you need to help you grow, because ultimately it's all up to you anyways. But if I can just unlock a little piece in your mindset that keeps you on the right path, then great. Success is in your hands, but I'm going to give you the feedback you need to help you show up appropriately.
Yeah, so good. All right, I want to move towards giving people some practical feedback, and then we can wrap, G. But like I said, feedback doesn't come like you would go before. You would have rankings in buds. If you're at work, you have performance reviews. There's different areas where you have very clear feedback, but that's not how it works in life. So here's a feedback hint. If you're dealing with the same issue repeatedly and you're not getting closer to the results you want in an area of your life over a long period of time, that means you're ignoring feedback in some form. If you're on your third, fourth, fifth marriage, that's feedback, right? If you kind of get to the point that you're like, well, I just can't lose weight because I've been trying it for years, that's feedback. If nobody wants to be your friend and everywhere you go, you're like, man, I just can't seem to make friends. What's wrong with all these people? That's feedback. You can ignore that and just be like, man, these people are crazy. But chances are, if you think there's 1,000 people driving the wrong way on the freeway, you're the person that's driving the wrong way on the freeway, right? And so here's a few examples in practical life.
That sounds like the simpleton, unaware.
100%. Yeah, can you believe all these people just, wow, traffic's different today. It's all coming against me. Weird. Anyways, so a couple quick areas. Here you go, marriage. If your wife doesn't believe you'll do what you say, aka she doesn't want to follow you, that's feedback. That's her telling you she doesn't trust you. If every time you say something like, hey, I think we should do this, she's like fighting you on it, you're reaping the results of some inconsistencies in your life. And we've talked about this at length on this podcast. So I don't want to go too deep into that one, but that is feedback.
Yeah,
not the
and
kind you
again,
like.
yeah, no, it's not the kind you like, but the only proper response is to have the right attitude to it. Not to try and score keep or judge and say like, well, I should have at least 72% level of respect from you due to I've done this, and this, right? That's a horrible game to play. And you're almost always going to score the card in your favor. And your wife is going to score the card in her favor through her own perspective of here's all the things you've done that have caused me to not respect you. And so the only thing to do is have the right attitude and say, well, if I want to make it easier for her to follow me, I need to be more respectable.
Yeah. And feedback's harder when you don't have solid numbers. Wouldn't it be great if we could just have a life score, that just tells you here's how you're doing in life, which you're not going to get. Here's what it looks like from your kids. So I worked with this man years ago. I have no idea where he's at in life now, and I hope he's doing well. But he told me a story. He was in sales, and he had to be on the road a lot. And he said that the day it really hurt for him the most was he had kids, And when he would tell them he would leave, they'd always be like, "Dad, I don't want you to go." And like they would love him and hug him. And then one day he was like, "I'm leaving." They're like, "Okay, bye." And like they'd gotten so used to it that they just were like, "Okay, see you later." And they stopped really even missing him. And when he would come back, there was no reaction. Now, that's feedback telling you that you are losing your connection and your attachment with your kids. The unfortunate thing for this man in this circumstance is he just kept going because his career meant whatever it meant to him. I don't know what the motivation was internally. I can't speak to that. But unfortunately, what happened was he reaped a very broken relationship with his kids, got divorced, and unfortunately got hooked on some prescription pain medication, and just his life did not go the way he wanted to. And that's kind of a harsh example, but like I remember him telling me the story, and when he told me the story, he was like, "Yeah, that was the day it hurt the most, was when they stopped being upset that I was leaving." But he didn't change anything. He just kept leaving and was just like, "Man, that's tough. That hurts." It's a simpleton's reaction to it. He just completely
Yeah,
he was
it's
getting
it's either
feedback and he missed
it's
it.
either the simpleton or the fool, right? There's ignorance in it, or the fool out of the wrong heart. People are he's getting the feedback of like, hey, you're going in the wrong direction, and just saying, oh, I don't care, right? It's wanting the wrong things.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's it's
The
it's
fool
tough.
wants to be praised. The fool doesn't want to actually get better, right? The fool desires the wrong things. And in this situation, that man was either ignorant to the fruit of what his labor was going to create, or he wanted the wrong things in his life, didn't care about his family.
Yeah, very true. All right, and the easiest place, and like I said, we're just giving you a few examples. I hope that you're starting to see. I mean, you can get French feedback from your friends, you get feedback from your colleagues, you get feedback from people all the time, and it's up to you to actually discern and start to spot that. One of the easiest places to get feedback is in your health. I had a friend recently who took a DEXA scan for the very first time. And the results, what I say about a DEXA, the best thing about a DEXA scan is you can't hide from it. When you take a DEXA scan, it tells you what your body fat percentage is, how much lean mass you have, how much visceral fat you have, what your skeleton weighs, how thick it is, and all that stuff. It's a very, you can't hide from it. And he took the DEXA scan and was shocked at how high his body fat percentage was. And he doesn't look like a guy that would have a high body fat percentage. And to his credit, he took it on the chin and was like, "Man, I need to make some wholesale changes in my life," because it was shining the spotlight in a way that you can't lie and say, "Oh, that fat percentage is wrong." No, that fat percentage is right there with a numerical value, and you can either accept it and change, or you can sit there and lie to yourself.
It's hard to get numerical data like that in some of the other areas of your life.
Right,
You have to do a different type of statistical analysis where it's like, man, if 10 of my friends tell me I have a bad attitude, maybe I'm wrong.
right.
But there's no like DEXA scan for, having a bad attitude in many of the other areas of your life. But in your health, and what the point that I'm making is you should seek this type of feedback that is an anchor. And I encourage all the people that I work with personally, you need to DEXA scan. You need to know the truth. Your weight on the scale is not the real number. It's not a health number. It's just how much you weigh. And you can put a couple of plates on the scale that weighs 200 pounds. You can put a giant bag of jelly beans on the scale that weighs 200 pounds. They're not the same thing. And so the weight is not your number, but DEXA is your real numbers. And that tells you, you may have felt like you were working out really hard. You may have felt like you were eating right. And maybe the number went down on the scale and you realize that your health went in the wrong direction, right? You lost muscle mass. You're losing, right? And so you do need those things that are hard anchors in your life. So in the physical, we get the privilege of having some of those. In the other areas of your life, you've got to say, okay, maybe I can't like get a DEXA scan for my work ethic. I can't get a DEXA scan for my attitude. I can't get a DEXA scan for my skill set. But where can I get consistent feedback, or where can I get multiple forms of feedback that I can do some sort of numerical analysis?
Well, I think the DEXA scan for life in the body of Christ is that God has made it so that we're supposed to grow with other believers. You would be like the best DEXA scan for a positive attitude, and you've told me a few times when I've been a sourpuss, and maybe you haven't put it that nicely in the moment, but it was what I needed to hear. I mean, there was a time recently in our Giant Killers group where we had a man who was going through something difficult, and he was talking about it to us. And praise God, because we get to be with our Giant Killers every week, and that's the closest group we have for developing men and developing leaders. You were able to just speak very clear to this guy and say, "Hey, I wish you could see yourself right now, because you're feeling sorry for yourself and you're trying to like throw in the towel, and it's not helping you." You phrased it in a very firm, direct, with a with loving way, and the man had a phenomenal response to it, which is awesome. And I love seeing men turn that around. Where I feel for men is like anybody can get a DEXA scan. Not everybody's going to have a circle of people around them that are essentially their DEXA scan feedback for their
Well,
life.
and I would tell you that the quality of those relationships is really the quality of your scale. Like a great relationship is almost like a DEXA scan. Maybe not perfect, but they can tell you the truth. Like I trust Nick's feedback to me. It's not a DEXA scan, but it's pretty good. If I don't have good relationships, maybe I just have like a poundage scale and not a full in-depth scale like a DEXA scan.
Yeah, very good. Now,
We
I
got
want
to
to ask
get
you one question.
sponsored by DEXA because we're
Dude,
talking about it.
we got to get sponsored by a lot of things we use. I mean, we talk about a lot of stuff that we do regardless of whether they get paid. It'd be great just to plug those in like we did with
If
IDLife.
you
Like, hey,
would,
we're using you anyways.
if you're listening to this and you live in the Dallas area and you would like to start a DEXA scan business, I have a full business plan, and this is not a joke. I just don't have time to do this business. I think it would be very successful if you want to start a DEXA scan business in Frisco. I will help you. I know how to succeed. So if that's you, please reach out to us.
There you go. And also, if you're wondering about giant killers, go to theimpossible.life and look at our giant killers page. We have a few spots. It's a very limited group of men that we work with to develop leaders. It's not just for somebody that wants to hang out with Garrett and I a lot, although you do. You get an hour every week. We're pouring into the men, but it's accountability. It's real relationship. It's where we put some of the deepest work in with men that we are developing to go lead other men. So you can look that up. Now, the last question I wanted to ask you, because we're talking about feedback, we're talking about how to respond, how to identify it, respond to it, have a positive attitude and humility with it, which are the keys to unlocking the power of feedback. How do you know if feedback is calling for wholesale changes or if you're just not there yet? Because we gave the example of your SEAL journey where you had overwhelming feedback where it's like, you're not going to do it. Like, look at, and you, like you said, you even had feedback in buds where it's like you're bottom third. How do you know? And we all heard the story of somebody who's like a business success that failed their first 8 tries. Like, how are you, I don't want people to be like getting feedback and then just changing their whole life and dropping everything. How do you know the difference between when you need to change completely or if it's just part of the process and you're not there yet?
Ask me that again, Nick. I'm not understanding the question.
So when you're receiving feedback, sometimes there's feedback in your life like, bro, you're blowing it in your marriage and you need to really change some massive things, right? And sometimes what we would think would be obvious because of the fortunate environment that we're in to have a lot of great mentors and people who have shown us what's possible. I'm thinking about the person out there who the best marriage that they've seen is actually not that great, but they don't know it. And they might be getting advice from people that's telling them like, hey, you need to change this, you need to change that. How do you know if feedback is something that you need to like have a wholesale change where you're like, man, I really need to change this area of my life, or if it's just part of the process and you need to keep going, you're not there yet. For example, in business, your business, you might be failing, but it's because you haven't handed out enough flyers, which is an example.
Okay,
I know that
got
right?
it. So the question is, how do you know if you should listen to feedback?
Yeah, essentially. Thanks for simplifying.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand the question. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, my dad has a great answer for this one.
Okay.
Because growing up all the time, I was really good at defending myself. I would say I still am. I've matured a little bit. But I'm really good at telling, I'm really good at knowing why I don't have to listen to anybody or why I don't need to listen to somebody's feedback.
Awesome.
And what my dad would say is if the shoe fits, wear it.
Right.
And so that's it. You got to be able to be open, and also need to have some people in your life, right? Like if I got some feedback that I really wrestled with and I didn't feel like I could honestly receive, I would go to some of my mentors or I would come to some of my close friends like Nick or Josh and be like, man, somebody told me this and I'm not sure if they're right or not. I can't tell. Can you help me? Right. But the question, like what I'm going to do is I have to take any feedback and actually try the shoe on. Because that's what my dad would be like, all your reasons those are good reasons, but I'm still right. The feedback I gave you is still true. So you need to receive it and change.
Yeah, that's good, man. All right. Well, guys, I hope that this has been, like I said, the growth process is not a pretty montage. It's a lot of getting knocked down to your knees. It's a lot of having parts of you exposed and shown to you that need to change and having it hurt. Truthfully, it's a process of realizing that something about you needs to get better. And you can either choose to accept it with humility and have a positive attitude, all from a place of understanding that God loves you and that he's there to grow you and develop you, and it makes all things work together for your good and his glory, which means he's conforming you into the image of his son. That's what good is. And if you can have that perspective, if you can understand the need for humility, if you can keep that positive attitude and trust that God is developing you and that ultimately he's going to bring the purposes in your life, you can continue to grow. You can be the person that rises again over and over and over again. And when you look back, you'll begin to be thankful for the wounds that you've had. You'll be thankful for the people that have pointed out where you can get better. And you'll be the type of person that others will want to follow, want to hear from. And you'll be the type of person that can truly go in and make the change and fulfill the plans and purposes that God has for your life.